If you're selling products on Amazon that have an expiration date, there are things Amazon requires that most brands don't know about until something goes wrong. If you don't understand Amazon's policies around this, you can send in a perfectly good shipment and Amazon could reject it the moment it arrives at the warehouse. But the issue goes beyond Amazon's policies. If a customer misreads a date on your product, even if that date is correct and within policy, Amazon treats that as your problem as a seller. A confused customer becomes a complaint. A single complaint or negative review can have a big impact on your sales. Enough complaints and Amazon starts restricting or suspending your listing. So expiration dates on Amazon need to work on two levels. They need to satisfy Amazon's requirements, and they should be clear enough that not a single customer misunderstands them. I'm going to walk you through the rules and best practices every brand selling expirable products on Amazon needs to know. In this video, I'll show you what Amazon actually requires when it comes to shelf life and why it's more involved than most brands expect. The right way to label expiration dates so Amazon accepts your shipments and customers never misread them, and the most common mistakes brands make with expiration dates and how to avoid them before they cost you inventory or your listing. Years ago, I was working with a brand that was selling a supplement on Amazon. Their expiration dates looked fine, but we started noticing a pattern. Returns coming in, negative reviews with pictures, occasional messages from customers, all saying the same thing, that they received an expired product. However, when we looked at the actual product photos, the product wasn't expired. Customers were looking at the manufacture date printed on the label and reading it as the expiration date. The label said MF followed by a date, and customers didn't understand what MF meant. They just saw a date and assumed the worst. Once we had the brand spell out manufacture date in full on their next production run, the complaints stopped. It was a simple fix, but only once you knew what to look for. And at that time, it was manageable. Today, the stakes are even higher. Amazon now puts a frequently returned badge directly on listings that have higher than usual return rates. It shows up right there on the product page, visible to every single shopper. When that badge appears, sales drop fast and is very hard to recover from. So identifying anything that might cause a customer to return a product and eliminating it before it becomes a pattern is more essential now than it's ever been. Since then, I've put together a set of practices I walk every brand through when they're selling expirable products on Amazon, so you don't have those issues come up for your brand. Amazon considers a product expirable if it falls into any of these categories: food and beverages, supplements and vitamins, topical products like lotions, shampoos, cosmetics, soaps, and cleaning products. It also applies to bundles. If you're selling a bundle or a multi-pack and even one item inside it is expirable, the whole bundle is treated as expirable. And if your product has a period after opening symbol, that's the little open jar icon you see on a lot of cosmetic and personal care products, Amazon treats that product as expirable too. The next thing to understand is Amazon's shelf life requirements. This is one of the most common issues, and you need to understand this so you can effectively plan your inventory and know ahead of time if you're at risk of product expiring before it sells. When your inventory arrives at an FBA fulfillment center, it must have enough shelf life remaining to cover the full amount of time it takes a customer to use the product, plus an additional 90 days on top of that. The reason Amazon requires those extra 90 days is that after your inventory checks in, it still has to sit in the warehouse, get picked, shipped to customers, and arrive with enough time left to actually be used. That 90-day buffer accounts for all of that. So if you're selling a supplement that's a 30-day supply, Amazon requires at least 120 days of shelf life remaining at check-in. 30 days for the customer to use it, plus the 90-day buffer. That use period plus 90 days is also just the bare minimum to get inventory through the door, not a target to aim for. Build in as much runway as you reasonably can when planning production runs and shipment timing. Most brands I work with tend to ship inventory to FBA when it has 12 to 18 months of time left before it expires or more. Amazon does have a reference table in the policies that list minimum shelf life requirements by product category. For example, on dietary supplements, they want more than 2 years of shelf life, but dietary supplements are typically manufactured with 2 years of time until the expiration date when they're made. So I've looked into it. A lot of people have pointed out this issue in the forums, and Amazon has basically admitted that it's a mistake, and they say that this chart is intended as a guide only. So if you find that chart, you can just ignore it. Understanding these requirements also matters for a reason beyond just getting shipments accepted. Any brand selling an expirable product needs to be doing ongoing inventory forecasting, often looking a year or more ahead. You need to know your current inventory levels, when your inventory expires, and whether your current sales rate will clear that inventory in time. If one or more of your products has inventory that's in danger of expiring before it can be sold, you need to know that early enough to do something about it. That might mean running a promotion, offering a discount, or doing a buy one get one free deal. Whatever it takes to move the inventory faster before expiration really becomes a problem. The brands that stay on top of this are tracking those numbers regularly and adjusting before they're in a position where they just have to throw expired inventory away. Before you can enter expiration dates in a shipping plan, your listing has to be configured correctly. A lot of brands skip this step and don't realize it exists, and it causes problems later when they're trying to ship inventory in. When you're creating your listing, there's a field that's called Is Product Expirable? That needs to be set to Yes. From there, you'll need to select a product expiration type. There are 4 options. The first is Expiration Date Required. This means the expiration date is printed directly on the product or packaging, and when you build your shipping plan, you'll enter that specific date. This is the most straightforward option and what most brands use. The second is Production Date Required. This is for products where the manufacturer or production date is printed on the packaging instead of an expiration date. Amazon takes that production date and combines it with the fulfillment center shelf life you've entered to calculate when the product expires. The third is Expiration on Package. This means Amazon reviews the product when it arrives at the fulfillment center and assigns the expiration date themselves. Avoid this option. Handing Amazon that responsibility is unpredictable and it creates risk you don't need. The fourth is shelf life. This is for products that lose effectiveness over time but don't have a specific printed expiration date. Amazon tracks these based off of when they receive the inventory plus the number of shelf life days you've entered. You'll also need to enter the fulfillment center shelf life. This is just the number of days your product is sellable, anywhere from 0 to 1,825. If any of this isn't set up correctly, you may not be able to enter a date when building your shipping plan, or inventory could arrive at the warehouse and mistakenly get received as expired. Although a lot of the time it really won't cause problems and you might get away with it for a while before anything bad happens. If you're already selling and you realize your listing isn't configured right, you can just update it now before it causes a problem. These fields are usually in the safety and compliance section, although if you don't see them there, sometimes they are under the product details or another tab. Now, let's talk about how expiration dates actually need to appear on your product and packaging, because Amazon has specific formatting requirements here. With the exception of medical devices, which must be using the 4-digit year, month, and then day, the accepted date formats are month, month, day, day, year, 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 4-digit year, or month, then year. If your product uses a day-first format, you need to spell out or abbreviate the month so it's clear. For example, the 26th of June, 2026. And you'll notice you need to use a 4-digit year, always, never 2 digits. With 2 digits, customers can get confused whether it's a year or a day of the month. If you're selling a bundle or a multi-pack, every individual item inside the bundle needs its own expiration date label, and the bundle packaging needs one too. Use the earliest expiration date across all the items inside as the date on the bundle packaging. No handwriting is allowed, the dates need to be printed and legible. And when you're building a shipment, each box or master case can only contain one expiration date per ASIN. If you have units of the same product with different expiration dates, those need to be shipped in separate boxes. Meeting Amazon's technical requirements is not enough on its own. Your label also has to be designed so that no customer can misread it. Because as we covered in the start, if a customer misunderstands the date on your product, Amazon treats that as your problem regardless of whether the date is technically correct. The most common source of confusion I see is ambiguous date formats. That's exactly why Amazon requires a 4-digit year. But beyond just meeting the requirement, make sure your format is clear enough that there's genuinely no way to misread it. The second one is manufacture dates. If your product includes a manufacture date, spell it out completely. Manufacture date or manufactured, written out in full. I've seen it abbreviated as MF and then the date or MFG date. Customers who don't recognize an abbreviation next to a date will just assume it's an expiration date, and that becomes a return, a complaint, or a negative review. Another thing, lot numbers. Lot numbers are fine, but make sure they can't be mistaken for an expiration date. And by the way, regardless of whether you use Best By or Sell By or any variation of that, Amazon treats those as equivalent to expiration dates. Look at every date on your product and ask any way a customer could misunderstand what it means. If there's any chance they could, see if you can fix it in your next production run. Even when you've set everything up correctly, you'll sometimes run into issues. Here are the most common ones and what to do about them. First, it's worth knowing that having an occasional small number of units marked as expired is completely normal. Amazon doesn't necessarily sell inventory in the order it was received. So occasionally an older unit that just didn't sell early on gets flagged or sent out. Every brand I work with that sells expirable products will have a few units here and there show up as expired, and that's just how the system works. What's not normal is having a large number of units suddenly get marked as expired, and you know from your sell-through rate that there shouldn't be any way of that many expiring. That's when you know something is off. Either Amazon made a mistake or there's an issue with how the product was labeled or configured in Seller Central. When that happens, open a case with seller support and specifically request photos of the inventory. This is important. Sometimes the photos come back and you can see immediately that the product isn't expired. I swear, it's like these support people don't actually look at the photos they are sending. Once you have those photos, ask them to review and reclassify the inventory. Most of the time, if it's an error, Amazon will fix it. The next common problem is not being able to enter a date when building your shipping plan. If that option doesn't appear, go back to the listing and confirm that the expirable fields are configured correctly. I recommend fixing those. Although even if those fields aren't set up correctly, you can often still ship as long as the physical label on the product is correct. The third is Amazon disposing of units that are close to expiration. To protect yourself here, make sure your FBA settings are configured to return unfulfillable inventory rather than dispose of it automatically. If Amazon disposes of it, it's gone and there's nothing you can do. If they return it, you at least have the option to relabel it and send it back or sell it through another channel. Also, keep an eye on your sell-through rate, so inventory isn't sitting idle long enough to get close to expiration in the first place. You can see how long inventory has been at Amazon in the aged inventory report in the FBA inventory page. The best way to avoid all of these is to ship inventory with as much shelf life remaining as possible. The more runway you have, the less exposure you have to any of these problems. Now, what do you do when a customer says they received an expired product? If you do get a return, a negative review, or a message from a customer saying they received an expired product, the first thing to recognize is that it might not be a labeling issue after all. Like I mentioned, Amazon doesn't ship inventory in the order it was received, and occasionally an older unit gets sent out. It happens. But if you suspect the customer is misreading the date rather than actually having an expired product, and even if you think Amazon actually sent them an expired product, you need a photo. Here's the thing though. How you ask for that photo matters a lot. Obviously, give them a replacement product or a refund as you ask for the picture. However, you don't want to frame it as questioning whether the product is really expired and the customer just can't read. That puts the customer on the defensive. Instead, frame it this way. Explain that you are the brand and Amazon sent them that particular unit. You want to ensure Amazon doesn't make this mistake in the future. So you ask them if it's at all possible for them to send a picture so you can have proof to give to Amazon that they made a mistake, and you can bring it up to Amazon and make sure Amazon fixes it. That framing changes the whole dynamic. Now it's not you versus the customer, it's you and the customer going against Amazon together to get it fixed for future customers. Most customers respond well to that. In the meantime, send them a replacement product right away without waiting for the photo. It costs very little and it significantly increases the chance that they either update their review or don't leave a negative review at all. Once you have the photo, if it confirms the product wasn't actually expired, then evaluate what could have caused this customer to be confused and try to fix that on your next production run. One last thing, there's a California law called AB 660, taking effect July 1st, 2026. This applies to food specifically, so not other types of expirable products, just food. And it applies to products sold to California customers, which would include any of you selling on Amazon. This law requires that an expiration date related to quality say best if used by with the date, and dates related to safety to say use by. Sell by dates, for example, are no longer going to be allowed. Before making any label changes based on this, consult with a packaging or food labeling law expert to make sure you're getting it right for your specific product. I really don't know if Amazon themselves is planning on enforcing it, but make sure to talk to your manufacturer about this as they are probably already aware. If you're selling on Amazon, understanding the fees that are taking the largest cut of your revenue is just as important as everything we covered today. Even brands that have been selling on Amazon for a while are often surprised by what they don't fully understand about how these fees work. In my next video, I break down Amazon's largest fees, what they are, how they're calculated, and what every brand needs to know. Click right here to watch that video next.